Blueprints has a very interesting premise. You inherited your granduncle's estate under the condition that you discover the 46th room in this 45-room house. The layout of the house is randomized each day. You draft rooms that either have resources in them to help you advance, or puzzles that tie into the greater mystery of the house. It's like multiple different games combined into one. It's a roguelike, a puzzle game, and a strategy game. I don't think you should play Blueprints. The most concise reason I can give is that this game does not respect your time. The deeper you get into the game, the more evident this becomes. In total, I've played for 53 hours, and I've reached the very end. If I consider the whole experience, all the good with the bad, then I come to the conclusion that it wasn't fun. So I can't recommend Blueprints. I have many reasons for disliking the game. So let's get into it with the biggest reason. How this whole game is just one big slot machine. Blueprints is the most RNG dependent game I've ever played. The majority of puzzles interact with the drafting mechanic. You need this specific room to spawn next to this other specific room. Or getting one item on a day where you also come across this one room. These start out as simple two-step RNG conditions, but the later puzzles scale up to have layers upon layers of RNG. I'm trying not to spoil too much, but imagine having to get 3 specific items when the game has 27 possible items to spawn. You need to combine these 3 items in one room that has a rare spawn rate. The game has over 100 rooms total, by the way. And then you need one more uncommon room to safekeep this combined item. That's gambling. I want to point out that this game does have permanent progression upgrades and RNG manipulation tools to unlock. But Blueprints has a very flawed progression system, where the upgrades are minor RNG tweaks, while the RNG requirements of the puzzles scale up exponentially. For example, you can upgrade rooms in this game. And one very good upgrade you can get is that this one room will always have 2 dice in it. The room isn't guaranteed to spawn in your future runs, but when it does, it's very powerful. You can use these dice to reroll the 3 choices of rooms once for each die. Now contrast this with the example I outlined earlier, with the 3 specific items and specific rooms. It's a drop in the bucket. When you get these upgrades is also dictated by RNG in 2 ways. First, there are 16 rooms to upgrade, and which one you get to upgrade at that time is chosen randomly. There is one that allows you to pretty much break the gold economy of the game, if you combine it with other permanent upgrades. For me, this room upgrade was on the 15th disc out of 16, so my luck was way below average. And secondly, most of these upgrade discs are behind puzzles that require RNG themselves. It's gambling all the way down. Even these permanent upgrades work with the analogy of a slot machine. A slot machine will eventually spit out some money. To a gambling addict, this money is just a resource they can put back into the machine. In Blueprints, eventually you will get lucky at some point. You unlock something that makes future runs just a little bit easier. And the player sees that as an incentive to go back into the machine. But you don't realize that the game will only become more grindy, not less. Later on, the game has a couple of puzzles that are very meta. But the biggest meta puzzle of them all is learning the lesson that gambling sucks, because the house always wins. I also want to highlight how this very heavy RNG is making the puzzles in this puzzle game worse. One thing I can give Blueprints credit for is that it's a very unique game. And because of its uniqueness, it has ways of frustrating the player, which you can only experience in this game. You worked on a puzzle and it finally clicks. You solved it. You get excited and want to see what it's all about. If you're playing a puzzle game, this specific feeling is most likely what you're trying to get out from the experience. And then Blueprint stands in your way and informs you that you do not have the right conditions to implement the puzzle solution. You're not allowed, because you didn't get that one room to spawn. I'm not exaggerating when I'm telling you that sometimes the moment when I solved the puzzle and the moment when I had the RNG to use the solution were 5 hours of gameplay apart. Blueprints is a very uncompromising game. You have to go at the pace the RNG dictates. The game does not treat your time as precious. Normally, I'm very hesitant to use guides in games, if I can't help it. And especially not puzzle games. People can choose how they have fun with games, of course. However, I think the blind experience of blueprints is bad. Picture the following scenario. You rolled good. You got a super rare room with the correct item to start the puzzle. You know this to be true from a hint you found elsewhere. However, you are just not getting it. In a different puzzle game, you could work on something else and then return to it. Who knows when you'll luck into those perfect conditions again in blueprints. In most cases, it will be several hours. The prospect of saving several hours of boring grinding by just looking up the solution for 1 minute is extremely tempting. And the game doesn't really make a strong case for why you shouldn't cheat, in my opinion. When I was playing this game, my perception of the RNG followed a bell curve. It's all just RNG. Wait, it's actually not that bad. Oh, it is all RNG. Interestingly enough, I think all 3 perceptions are actually correct. At the start, it is all RNG. You're starved for resources and forms of RNG manipulation, because you don't have any of the permanent upgrades yet. You are completely at the mercy of RNG to get anything done. You have many short days that play out the same, with the same common rooms and nothing new happens. Then, in the middle of the game, the RNG eases up, somewhere around the time when you're beating the original goal set up in the opening cutscene. This main puzzle is the least luck dependent out of all of them. You're working on that, as well as all the side puzzles you can find. So you're casting a wide enough net that something new is bound to happen in most days. You don't have to zero in on one specific puzzle, but rather you can keep your goals open and just work on whatever the day brings. The RNG doesn't hit that hard. Then after the halfway point, blueprints becomes horrible. The puzzles you can work on start to thin out. The only ones left unsolved are the ones behind multiple layers of RNG. Many days will be spent grinding for the good rolls, or tediously grinding out meta progression to increase your odds. Same boring gameplay, no actual puzzle solving. Beneath the puzzles and dice rolls, there is also a strategy game. The way you draft your house will influence how much you're going to achieve in this one run. However, I'm of the opinion that this side of the game is very shallow. Here is how you play the game. Firstly, you need to manage your resources. You need steps to go into new rooms, keys to unlock doors, gold to buy items, and gems to draft special rooms. Over time, you'll learn which rooms generate these resources. So you'll just draft those when something is running low. Most important here are the gems. If you're out of gems, then you're forced to build the rooms that cost 0. You can't back out of the drafting phase either, after you interacted with the door. So it's best to always keep your gems high, so that you're never forced into a bad choice. Under normal conditions, each room can only be created once per day. So you want to dump dead-end rooms into corners, where they don't hinder your progress. Otherwise, they could show up later where they really hurt. In general, you want to keep your options open. Rooms with many doors are strong, because you don't have to rely on a single doorway to keep progressing the run. And that about covers it. I don't think that's very deep. There are books you can find that spell out these strategies to you. But my approach didn't change at all after reading them. I was doing that already. There are also synergies between rooms, but they don't really make the game more strategic, in my opinion. They are just something you'll decide on your feet. You don't need a grand plan. For instance, the terrace room will remove the gem cost from all future green rooms. So if this room comes up, obviously you wanna create more green rooms. I'm not planning for it. It's just if A happens, I'm gonna do B. Same thing with item interactions. The keycard opens all security doors without having to use keys. When I find it, I make sure to create a security room to increase the amount of security doors that spawn. I'm not really strategizing. I'm just reading what the keycard does and reading what the terminal says. And lastly, there are rooms that can only spawn under certain conditions. But once again, this is just something you'll decide on a case-by-case basis. If your goal for this run is to get this one room, then you'll do what the note told you to do. I think you hit the skill ceiling of blueprints extremely fast, maybe in 5 to 10 hours. But the game demands well over 60 hours if you want to do everything without guides. This is another reason why the RNG can get so annoying. If there was room for very smart strategic plays, then you could outskill bad RNG rolls. And on a losing run, you could go, damn, I need to play better. But this game is closer to tic-tac-toe than to chess. Next, I want to explain what playing Blueprints actually feels like. It's a puzzle game, strategy game, and gambling machine. But most of the time, it's a walking simulator. This game is slow and is missing several quality of life features. Each run starts with an unskippable cutscene that slowly zooms into the doorway. Instead of starting the run, you immediately turn around to activate one of the permanent upgrades outside. You have to do this every run, and it takes about 50 seconds to run there and back. The running speed is too slow. Now the run starts. Kinda. The first few floors play out pretty much the same. You've seen these rooms dozens of times. If you come across a terminal, you have to do the same steps you're always doing, like lowering the security level and setting the doors to be unlocked in the case of a power outage. There are fade in and out animations for terminals, and you have to wait until the entire text appears before something becomes interactable. Later on, you get an upgrade to interact with other terminals remotely. So there are even more menus to click through. Plus, there's an extremely slow dial-up connection animation for this. Code-locked saves you have unlocked do not stay unlocked on future runs. So you have to keep all codes in your mind. And you have to input them each time with all the animations that play, to get the gem inside. Whenever you pick up an item for the first time in a run, you get a pop-up you have to click away, even though you've probably seen this item 50 times already. Whenever you dig up a dirt spot, there's a black fade out plus a pop-up. This is homework. And I didn't even mention the literal homework the game gives you on each run. The dartboard puzzle. There are randomized math equations on this thing. You have to solve them to get necessary supplies for the run. Thankfully, it's 9th grade math, so I personally found this to be one of the easier puzzles overall. But in terms of tedium, this is the peak. I've solved 61 of these by the time I finished Blueprints. That's too much homework. The parlor puzzle at least is closer to being a puzzle. There are 3 boxes with statements on them, and there is always at least one truth and one lie. You have to work through the statements to find the prize. I had fun with these at first. I've completed 62 total. It's not fun anymore. Blueprints also has the dreaded waiting puzzle inside of it. Twice. 2 puzzles will only open after a certain amount of time has passed in the game. In real time, that's about 40 minutes of waiting. So you set a timer on your phone and walk away from the video game. That's not my idea of a fun puzzle game. Individually, all these complaints might seem minor. Waiting 5 seconds for an animation is really not a big ask. But it's the combined tedium of them all that makes the gameplay of each run very annoying. It's not a smooth ride. You're constantly bumping into stuff that slows you down. Small things that add up over time. The opening cutscene takes 12 seconds. I've done 128 runs. So that comes out to 25 minutes of seeing the exact same thing. I also want to take a moment to highlight how this issue compounds all the previous issues of Blueprints I discussed. For this run, you're trying to get a lucky roll to combine 2 specific rooms or 1 room with 1 specific item to solve a puzzle. This puzzle was already solved in your mind 5 hours ago, and you're just waiting for the game's slow pace to drip feed you the opportunity to implement the puzzle solution. While you're hoping for the good rolls, you're grinding out your dailies like it's an MMO. Run outside, make the room, back inside, do your math homework. Then you're drafting rooms, which isn't engaging you mentally anymore. It's too easy. When you finally solve the puzzle, your reward is a hint towards another puzzle. And around you go again. You're sitting at a terminal waiting for the slow dial-up to connect, and a question pops into your mind. Am I having fun? No, not really. I want to pump the brakes for a bit and praise some good puzzles the game has. I will be vague and not show the solution for any of them. The main puzzle that kicks off the game, reaching room 46 in a house that only has 45 rooms, is the best puzzle in the entire game. There are many solutions to it. And there are a ton of hints spread throughout all the rooms that bring you closer to discovering each of them. You are slowly inching towards your goal. All the permanent unlocks give you a tangible benefit for reaching this goal. And the majority of days feel like good progress. This is definitely the peak of the game. The mechanics of blueprints make the most sense with this puzzle. And while I still don't think the heavy use of RNG is all that great here, you can still get absolutely roadblocked by bad luck, it is at least acceptable. If every puzzle was similar to the main one in style, then Blueprints would actually be a pretty decent game in my opinion. The sigil puzzle is also quite good. You need 8 different keys, and there's a poem that hints at each of their locations. Some of them are a bit RNG heavy, but since you have 8 of them to work on at the same time, it's not too bad. Once more, you're casting a wide net. Then comes the real part of the puzzle, where you figure out the 8 sigils, which each consist of 5 parts. You need a ton of hints from all over the game, but actually getting to input the solution needs very little RNG. If you have some permanent unlocks, you can even get to a point where you need 0 RNG, and can go to the sigils first thing at the start of a run. So working on this wasn't as frustrating as some other puzzles. The clock puzzle is nice for the most part. The first half is terrible of course, but the second half is very good. You have to set 8 clocks to specific times, and there are notes on the clocks that tell you the conditions. Now, the number of individual configurations a clock can have with the hour and minute hands is enormous, not to mention having 8 different clocks. But the conditions from the notes make it so that there's only one possible solution that fulfills all conditions at the same time. So it's a process where you keep refining your solution with every change, while checking the conditions to see if any one of them is broken. This puzzle is really well designed. It's very smart. But sadly, I think these 3 puzzles stand out from a bunch which really aren't that good. Most of the time, you'll get a note that tells you to do something extremely specific, like going into a room while having 3 specific items in your inventory, or digging in a spot that absolutely does not look like you can dig there. The puzzle solving part of these is just getting the information to do these unusual things. But more than half of the puzzles in the game are these knowledge-gated unusual things to do. You'll get into strings of doing these puzzles back to back. Get the right conditions to do this one unusual action. Then you get a note that tells you to do something unusual in some other room. It feels like you're just being strung along. Every mystery box you open just has another mystery box inside it. I think to give Blueprints a fair chance, you have to meet the game halfway and take notes for all the puzzles. By the end, I had 4 pages of notes, an image folder with 68 screenshots, plus all the recorded footage to reread books and such. I think the notes really illustrate the issue. At first, I was keeping track of all the hints, as well as writing down information for all the puzzles which are harder to decipher. By the end, I just have a dry list of RNG conditions that need to happen on the same day to do these unusual tasks. I really don't think the puzzles of Blueprints are all that good overall. I also want to take a moment to talk about the aesthetics of the puzzles in Blueprints, taking a step back from the underlying rules of the puzzle, and just looking at what you're actually doing in this game. This next comparison is perhaps a bit unfair, but in Outer Wilds, you're solving one giant mystery that spans the entire solar system. All the different planets have their own smaller mysteries that you can get lost in, which then connect to the bigger picture by the end. You'll land on a planet, and the game doesn't really have to do much convincing to get you interested in the puzzle. Things just look cool, and you'll want to understand them. The puzzle solving happens very organically. Meanwhile, in Blueprints, I'm looking at a dartboard doing math equations. Or I'm staring at 2 paintings while deciphering what is essentially just a dad joke. Plain and pain, like a window pane. Seriously, the game is full of puns and wordplay, and I just can't really see those as something compelling. A good chunk of the puzzles are lame. Now, to level with you, I don't go into games expecting to find the next Outer Wilds. Chances are I never will. But I don't really struggle to name puzzle games which I think are better than Blueprints. Portal 1 and 2, Baba Is You, The Talos Principle, The Case of the Golden Idol, Crosscode, Outer Wilds, Fez, The Room, We Were Here. If I was asked to recommend puzzle games, then I would name any one of those, but not Blueprints. So, in conclusion, I don't like Blueprints. It requires an absolutely massive time commitment with all the RNG checks, and it's often a very frustrating experience. The strategy elements aren't very engaging. The pace is slow, and many of the activities in blueprints unnecessarily waste your time. And finally, the puzzles range from good to extremely bad, with the overall quality leaning more towards bad in my opinion. I wanna give some feedback on what I think could be improved with this game. Basically everything I talked about in the walking simulator section should have optional settings in the menu. Skippable cutscenes, turning off animations and pop-ups, increasing the running speed, having saves stay open. The dart and parlor puzzles should honestly be auto-completed after you get the trophy for solving 40 of them. No more homework. The prize is just open when you draft a room. The easy math upgrade for this room is a bad solution to this issue, because it's weighed against another very good upgrade that helps with the RNG. The game needs way stronger forms of RNG manipulation. I was quite surprised to learn that you never get any dice as a starting upgrade. Late game puzzles should give you a permanent starting die as a reward. The 2 gold allowance is an absolute joke, when the game has been going on for 50 hours and my starting allowance is well over 200 already. At some point there should also be an upgrade to draw 4 rooms while drafting instead of 3. Again, from one of the longer post-game puzzles. The observatory stars are too grindy. The really good unlock from it needs to come way sooner. Reaching room 46 should give you an incredibly strong upgrade. That's the point where the quality of puzzles takes a nosedive, and the grind of the game skyrockets, and you get nothing to help you out. It's quite disheartening. One reward I thought of is to have a permanent code check inside the entrance hall to help with all future item-based grinds. This would also be a good buff for the code check, because currently it can be a bit of a trap. How it works is that you can put an item inside and you can retrieve it on any day you want. Sounds great, right? The issue is that you can't guarantee that you'll get the code check in a run. And while an item is inside there, it's removed from the loot pool. Say you put a hammer in there. Now the hammer can't spawn anywhere in your future runs besides the code check. Is it actually helping at that point? The code check is only good for items that are hidden behind multiple layers of RNG. But with this permanent addition to the entrance hall, it would be very strong. And again, it's only after beating the main puzzle. You're likely at a point where you fully mastered the gameplay portion of this video game. These are all changes that could possibly be implemented into the game. Now I want to talk about a version of this game that definitely can't happen anymore. The middle section is the best part, and the whole game should have been like it. Instead of these restrictive RNG dependent puzzles, where you have to do something unusual in an unusual spot, every puzzle should be super open-ended and accept multiple solutions. The game only has one room 46 puzzle, when really there should have been 8 like it. And they each have 4 possible solutions. That would be the extent of the game. No post-game, no math homework, no save codes to figure out. Just 8 really big mysteries to solve in this house, which require minimal RNG grinding. The scope of the game would be much smaller like this, and the playtime would also be way shorter. But as far as I'm concerned, playing the postgame of Blueprints is not fun at all. So why not maximize the good part and remove the bad part? I think that's the only way a roguelike puzzle game could work. As it is right now, I see it as a very interesting game to discuss, that tried something unique, but it didn't work out in my opinion. Obviously, I think Blueprints is not good, but tastes can be very different. I can only offer you my perspective, and no other. If you do want to play it, maybe wait for a sale, and keep your expectations low. And please heed my warning. You've beaten the game when you first see the credits. There is nothing beyond that point. Anyone who tells you that there are post-game puzzles is lying, including myself. Turns out the game was only 12 hours long, and for the remaining 41 I was just staring at a wall imagining I'm solving puzzles. I don't know what Stillwater is. You got the true ending. Just let it rest. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to see future content. Until then, goodbye.